All right. Well, I'm really excited about our next panel. We're going to be talking about Kentucky again. It's a very exciting time for the Kentucky market as they're just getting out there for medical. So I would love to invite Rachel Roberts to the stage. Give it up for Rachel.
Thank you. Before the panelists come out, I just wanted to start by saying thanks so much to the Lane Brothers for this amazing event. And I had so much fun today reading all these people's bios. I work with them every day, but as you all know, when you're drinking by the fire hose, sometimes you forget to ask background questions, you're just working. So be sure to go to the app and read all their bios because they're amazing. Would our panel please come out now, please? Sean, Malina, and Krista. You're allowed to clap for them. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. Would you go ahead and introduce yourselves? Sean, you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm Sean Clarkson. I'm CFO of Gold Leaf Management. We oversee a variety of operations in cultivation, retail, and processing in Arkansas, Missouri, and now Kentucky. So we're working to get the Kentucky market launched. It's a work in progress, but I know everyone's working hard on our side.
Hi everyone, my name is Malina Dumas. I'm a partner at Dentons, which is a global law firm. We have offices all around the world, and importantly, we have 2 in Kentucky, in Lexington and Louisville. I'm part of the national cannabis team, and I focus exclusively on licensing and regulatory compliance. I've been doing that for about 8 years, and was really excited to get involved with our team in Kentucky over the past couple of years. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Krista Raymer. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at C3 Industries, and we have a retail banner called High Profile. We operate in 6 states, with 7th coming online next week, being Kentucky, and have 2 cultivation facilities in Missouri and Massachusetts.
Krista, I'm going to start with you and just help me set the scene for Kentucky. So some of you who may have been here for the regular conversation know that we have been up and running for less than 18 months. We've already got 9 cultivations going, 2 processors, 3 actually, but the 3rd one hasn't quite started yet, but they've been approved. And then we've got 11 dispensaries. So you are, first of all, from your consulting business, obviously you've worked with a ton of people across the country, now with C3. How do you think the rollout's gone in Kentucky? I know we hear a lot as Kentuckians that it's taken too long, but those of you in the industry know to be this far along in 18 months, at least to me, feels like lightning speed.
To me, it also feels like lightning speed to some extent, and then in other places, probably not as much. The interest from the customer base or the medical environment with patient cards is really high. Like, I think if you compare it to places like Georgia, it is outpacing, which is based off of that conversation this morning. In an environment, it is so important to get education out there, and I think that there's still a lot of opportunity for people in different communities to be aware that this program is operational and stores are open, that's our responsibility as operators to help make that happen.
Sean, do you want to follow up on that and just talk about what you feel like the foundation for growth has been in Kentucky and what your experience has been so far?
Slower than expected. That is a key that you will probably hear from the operators that are in the state. The one big takeaway that I have on that Kentucky market as compares to some of the other markets around the country, in the region, opening a cannabis market in 2026 is substantially different than opening a cannabis market in 2020. The customer expectation level is just higher than it was in 2020. You have customers who have been to stores in more mature markets, have been to stores in Ohio, Missouri, Colorado, all across the U.S., and they carry over those expectations back into their home state of Kentucky. So they expect to go to a store that has high quality product across the board, diversity of product, and then pricing that is closer to what they have seen in these mature markets. All markets start out high when it comes to pricing level. You have infrastructure that has to be put in place. We're building out facilities in 18 months. The customers don't care about that. The customers want the same cannabis experience that they get across this region in Kentucky, and they're responding to that when that is being provided. So it has been a slow start to this market, but it's just the expectation level is different than it was for other markets that have gotten started. And as we have more stores opening, as we have more product coming online, you're seeing that interest continue to grow. But the standard's been set. The standard's been set by Ohio, Missouri, these other states, and that's generally the expectation that these customers and patients in Kentucky want to see.
So I think what I'm hearing everybody say is that like the build outs on your side have been really rapid, but the adaptation from the patient side has been a little slower than some of us had maybe hoped or thought in the beginning. And we saw that happen. So we had a lot of people sign up in January of last year. And then they didn't get any product until December. We had one dispensary open in December. It stayed open for 1 week and then ran out of product. And it really wasn't until January that we started having like a consistent stream of product for patients. And now I think it's safe to say that we have product variety, but not brand variety yet. The brand variety is still probably a month or two away. So one of the things that we saw as the association, and I know that you all felt, was the patient numbers were slow to climb last year. And then we hit a cliff in January when patients weren't able to access product yet. We as the association did a lot of work around patient drives, and we've been really trying to work to bring those numbers up, and we're starting to see the rebound. So Sean, do you want to talk about, I know you have had experience with patient drives like in Arkansas before, and what you think, how you think they can help the industry, what you've seen as those are going in Kentucky?
So the number one trigger for patients signing up for the program is going to be store openings. That's the key, and we've seen that as stores have opened throughout the state. You'll see a spike in those numbers in those particular regions. Store gets open, that's going to be your main trigger to go get a patient card. The patient drives obviously help. It's something that as the industry association we have done to help find the practitioners, to help with some of the costs on these patient drives. We have typical practitioner within the state of Kentucky will cost for an initial visit somewhere between $150 and $200 for an initial visit. That's a burden along with higher prices. It's something that is keeping people away from the program. These patient drives that are organized both by the KCIA and other participants in the industry have been very helpful in that case. But the number one factor in getting patients to sign up is it's stores. And I don't want to beat a dead horse on that, but there's 10 stores, maybe 11 now that are currently open out of the 48 in the state.
12 next Tuesday.
12 next Tuesday. And it's going to continue to grow throughout the summer. Please open. I know C3 has a store in Lexington. We manage the other store in Lexington. I'm okay if you do not open that particular store. But it is better for the industry when you have more stores open, when you have product diversity and brand diversity on the shelf. Everybody wants to have market share, but ultimately we live or die with the success or failure of the overall market.
Malina, I want to ask you broadly about regulatory stuff here in just a second. Before I do, I think for anybody who's not familiar with the Kentucky market, some of our unique challenges there, especially when it comes to getting patients to sign up, is that we have such a history as a pill mill state. So our lawmakers and a lot of people in the state are very, very hesitant to see patient drives. I think we're just handing cards out to people. So that has been an educational barrier that we're constantly working to overcome. We also have some really unique challenges as far as the patients and their interaction with the state. So everything that a patient has to do to obtain their certificate and eventually their card takes place online. That may seem simple to a lot of us, but we are seeing at some of these patient drives we're doing, especially in more rural communities, that about 25% of the people that show up to the patient drives don't even have an email address. Then they have to create an account in the portal. They have to download an attestation form, have it notarized, re-upload it, and then wait a few days for their card to come through. They have to do that same process again, even if they're renewing. So some of this stuff that's been built into our statutory law and into our regulations is challenging and unique to Kentucky. So Malina, would you go ahead and just kind of talk about some of that and what you think might be unique to Kentucky, given how many states you've done work in?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So what I wanted to kind of talk about with Kentucky is to the extent there are so many more restrictions in Kentucky with what we saw last week with rescheduling, this might actually end up being kind of a benefit to the market. I definitely think with paperwork, like you were just talking about, that's something that really probably needs to be fixed, and I'm sure the regulators and the trade associations support a more streamlined process for getting forms notarized. That's something that we saw in a lot of states, and I work in some states now where principals of the business have to get forms notarized for any new application and renewal, and then a lot of states did away with that, and hopefully that'll happen with patient certifications too, because it's just too many steps. But in some ways, the limited number of licenses, being medical only, having it be a new market that's just coming online is going to dive really well into the new DEA registration process, for example. So I know there are still a lot of questions about how the rescheduling event from last week impacts dual licensed companies that have co-located medical and adult use operations that operate in a lot of different states or even just in one market. In Kentucky, for licensees, I think it's really a no-brainer to go for these registrations. Dentons has worked on DEA registrations before, so we know in the context of not state-licensed cannabis companies, but getting the bulk manufacturer license, for example, for research purposes for marijuana. So we know that it can be the case that applications sit on a desk for years and they are never granted, and there is discretion from DEA to deny applications. So operators in the state-licensed medical cannabis program in Kentucky have this opportunity within this 60-day window to file an application, and the rule and the order state that the DEA is going to do everything they can to process all of those applications within 6 months, and then those operators can continue to operate under their state license for the pendency of the period while their application is under review. And it's also just going to be a lot more streamlined for those businesses to apply for these applications. You need a separate DEA registration for each location, and you need to provide information about your suppliers, where that's going to be a more limited list. In Kentucky, information about your employees. And then there just won't be those questions about what does it mean if I check this box yes for I operate in the adult use program in the state. So I feel like Kentucky was actually just happened to be set up really well for this particular moment to get not just the tax relief, but also the other benefits. We're still kind of working through this, but as a federally legal business, having opportunities for trademark protections at the federal level that have never been available, for bankruptcy, potentially insurance for patients, uplisting. So there's just so many things that we can start to explore, and I hope that Kentucky licensees will really take advantage of that too. So there are still restrictions that are creating issues now with signing up patients, and the qualifying conditions need to be expanded, and I know that OMC supports that. There's a lot of support for that, but it just takes time to have changes at the state level, and I know Kentucky's been taking kind of this wait and see approach, but maybe that's going to work to the benefit of the state now to kind of dovetail those changes with what works best for the federal rescheduling process for both medical and hopefully for adult use as well, as Kentucky looks to that in the future.
You said are they expanding from PayPal, accepting more than PayPal?
We think so. We think there's an ACH. Yeah, just those little things. So lots of fun for people that logged in yesterday and were trying to file applications, but happy to talk to anyone about that.
The regulators who are up here today, Cannon and Hannah, who are great. We've had such a great relationship with them. They've been so open in communication, and we're really fortunate in this industry, in this moment in time, that we have a governor who's so supportive of the program. We have had less luck with the General Assembly. I came from the General Assembly. I was there when the underlying law got passed, and Kentucky's a very religious state. I always like to tell people who don't know how Kentucky politics works and this is true, there are more pastors in the Kentucky General Assembly than Democrats. And so it's always going to be seen as a sinful industry. And so what we learned this year, trying to make statutory recommendations to them, is that they're just not ready to move on the base law. But we have a real opportunity in the next 2 years, while Governor Beshear's still there and with Cannon at the helm, to ask for regulatory changes that could be helpful to the industry. And some of the places that I hear from our members that maybe there could be some work there that would be really helpful, and the underlying law is so constraining to us. Advertising, some of the potency limits. Does anybody want to talk to some of those unique constraints for Kentucky and some regulatory changes that you think might be helpful to the industry?
I mean, I think to Sean's point earlier, store access is super important, and I would say patient awareness of those stores is also very important. Within the regulatory framework, we would like to be able to more freely highlight where our stores are and talk about what products we have available at the store. I think within and how you potentially read those regulations, obviously there's a lot of opportunity around education, but even still within that, it's like being able to advertise that the store is open and advertise what our offering is at that location is a key component to being able to grow this market. Also, to Sean's point, I think that having multiple doors accessible in one area is like rising tides lift all boats. And so we've seen that happen in other markets, and that happened really explicitly in Missouri. And so when we saw more store density, we also saw a much larger medical patient awareness before we ever went rec there. And so we'd like to be able to create the same type of scenario in Kentucky.
Yeah, overall, I thought that Kentucky did a great job at surveying the landscape of the region and other national markets when they put their rule set together. All states are going to have some bizarre rules that they throw in that you kind of have to live with. They've been overall very receptive into hearing the industry's opinion on some of those rules. Some of them are going to be statutory, that getting something through the legislature has its challenges. We'll see from the regulatory perspective, but they have been very receptive to those changes. Personally, I would not like to throw away an entire harvest that tests above 35%. I would like to be able to remediate that if at all possible. But there's just some one-off items like that we're working with Cannon, who was here earlier, and the OMC to help rectify where we can. The changes that have to be made through the legislature is more of an uphill battle. But generally, they've been open to at least hearing those to our face. Who knows what's talked about behind the scenes. It is what it is. But I'm confident that over time, we can work with both the regulators and with the legislature to make the appropriate changes to the overall program for the betterment of everyone.
I was just going to say, I think it's great to be talking about that now, and I know we're going to talk about probably the trade association as well, but it's just a great environment to be in, to have KCIA and to have this small group of operators that are all kind of going through the same thing at the same time, and to be able to share those experiences and be talking to the regulators on a constant basis now. But that's going to be so important, because in my experience with government relations in other states, like, it's much easier to get a change in the rule before the draft is published, right? So it's having those conversations early and trying to come together as a group and see what are some changes that really are reasonable, that really are going to help everyone, that are going to be really hard to object to. So just to kind of build that foundation on whatever you're seeing over the next several months as key problems, but especially in those areas where, okay, the rule could be interpreted one way or another. Let's make sure it's clear in rule that it's the way that we want it to be interpreted, rather than like creating, huge sweeping changes, of trying to go for that at the policy level that are going to need to go through the legislature for approval. So I think it's a great situation for the operators to be in, to have that collaboration and meeting with each other regularly.
Yeah, we've been very lucky that way so far, for sure. I think, Sean, maybe you could talk to sort of the trade association. And I know most of you here are from Ohio, and you're so lucky to have David. David and I kind of came into our roles at the same time, and he's been a great resource to me and a great friend. So my experience is working with him and working with Andrew Mullins from MoCan. So I've really only seen these associations that are kind of fully functioning, operate as three-legged stools, where we can advise on legal stuff. We can obviously do government affairs. Can you talk about other states, maybe what you think we've done well as an association, where you think we have an opportunity to grow, why it was important for like the main members who got licenses early to set up the association right away?
Yeah, so when licenses were originally issued, starting a trade association that represented everyone with one collective voice was a priority. I've been a part of a couple different organizations, some of which are very effective, some of which will hold some events and you can go have a beverage, and that's about the limitation of that organization. So getting together, banding together early, having a collective voice for the industry association was a key, and it's something that I think that the OMC, the regulators, respected early on, and that was something where they knew they didn't have to go to people individually, they could go to one specific group, but it goes beyond that. They have been receptive, the legislature's been receptive to us, there's been some educational initiatives that we have run with the legislature. I have had to explain the difference between what we sell in a medical marijuana dispensary versus what is in the hemp stores to about every legislator in Frankfort, Kentucky, which can be frustrating. But that's part of the legacy of the state. With the industry association, that education piece, the working with the regulators, it does only go so far. One big thing that we are looking to do is to have more organization early on in the program around the PAC. we're not naive in this room that to get the legislature, to get politicians to work for the industry, there has to be some incentive for them to do so. It's not a one-way street, and to actually have the ability to go up and make real practical change for the betterment of the patients in the state, for the betterment of our businesses, you have to have some teeth behind what you do as an industry. So as we grow through this educational piece, through the working on various tweaks to the regs, tweaks to the statutes that govern our overall industry, at the end of the day, our ability to successfully push this program to maturity, to potentially and hopefully one day become a recreational state in Kentucky, we have to have the power of purse strings when it comes to that pack. So that's something I've been proud of with Rachel, which, by the way, guys, Rachel is phenomenal as a director, executive director of the KCIA. From the beginning, she has been an all-star advocate for our program, and the inroads that she has made with everyone in the state from a political level to the individual businesses has been outstanding. Could not have a better leader of that organization. All that to say, we've got a lot of work left to do. That PAC piece, the financial piece, is what really gets things done. And that's going to be the next shift for us overall as an industry association, is going from the educational aspect to that financial aspect.
Thanks for that. Weed is a lot more fun than politics, so I'm enjoying this role a lot more. So I want to ask this to each of you. So we sit here, on the precipice of 18 months as an industry in Kentucky. Hopefully by July, we'll have half of our dispensaries open around the state. And then things will continue to progress from there, obviously. If we were to look ahead into the future, 2 years from now, what do you and your organizations think a thriving, sustaining marketplace would look like in Kentucky? And are there any steps you think we still need to take as an association or as your individual businesses that could get you there a little faster or help that come to fruition?
For us, I think we're always going to be interested about being in a medical environment and eventually setting ourselves to be able to be in a recreational environment. So we have to build trust, I think, over the next year as operators in terms of how we operate, what our relationships with our patients looks like, to be able to even start to have that conversation. So we're going to spend the next year building trust both within our local communities as well as with groups like yourself, to make sure that we are leading the way and saying, like, we can be effective operators here, we can work within the regulatory framework, and we can do it respectfully in a state that might be a little nervous. Then at that point, once we're at that stage, I'd love for us to be able to see full product availability. I think it's going to become very important as other states around Kentucky offer different product mix, and to Sean's point earlier, I think hemp stores and the familiarity with product formats there, it becomes important that we carry those products within our own store, so that will be important for us as well.
So I was on this stage last year for this event, and it's just kind of funny to me how much things have changed, because I know we were talking about Kentucky's future then, and what role it could play in the region and everything like that. And I was thinking years and years ahead about, like, oh, Kentucky would be a great exporter state because of the history there with the tobacco industry and distribution networks and all that in the middle of the country. And so now that's kind of reframing that, but that's actually a much more tangible opportunity for the reasons I was talking about earlier, but also being able to apply for exporter licenses. Like, there are all these new opportunities that are just starting to open up. So again, I just want to reiterate that, to kind of potentially take advantage of those opportunities now where there's this expedited process. And I hope that'll bring some advantages to Kentucky in the couple of years ahead. And then also staying really connected as a trade group, because there is power in having a unified voice, just especially when there's smaller numbers too, but if going to the regulator and state legislators being able to say the industry is united around this one thing, it's going to be much easier to make that happen. So hopefully the KCIA will continue to be as strong as it is now. And I will just say there's something about this region, because I'm from the state of Maine. I'm actually not from Kentucky. That's where I got my start. And it's nothing like what OCAN and KCIA have here in terms of a trade group coming together to advocate for sensible regulation. That's what you need are good compliant operators that have so much experience in this space and that can really work closely with the regulators in a collaborative way to do what's best for patients and for the industry to thrive.
150,000 patients would be dope. I would like to be playing more golf as well. But no, in seriousness, we need to get the stores open in the state. We need all 48 stores up and running sooner rather than later. It's been a chicken or the egg problem when it comes to wholesalers, cultivators, processors, and the dispensaries about what gets open first. Do you wait on patients to build up before you open stores? Do you get the cultivation open? And where does that all fall into place? At the end of the day, we have to get the stores open. That is the triggering event for patients to sign up, to get in the store. That moves more volume for the overall market. That is the key into seeing long-term sustainable growth in the Kentucky market. Going back to Krista's point for a second, building that trust is also key. There is nothing more fun than opening a dispensary in a smaller town that has some reservations, even though you will get a hold of some mayors that will call you secretly and say, hey, I love this. This is great. I just can't come to your ribbon cutting because I don't want to be seen down there and I have an election coming up. It's fun building that trust with the community, reducing the overall stigma for cannabis in these areas that never thought that they would have cannabis. And with that comes trust from the politicians, and that's how you get a recreational program in the long term. Only other piece that I would add on that is, as an industry and an industry association, I hope we avoid litigation as much as possible, as much as can be done in a state market. But part of that, with Kentucky, they've set it up in such a way that I do truly believe that there's room for everybody in that market to thrive. There's always going to be some form of power imbalance when you're talking about businesses operating within a state. I've been on both ends of it. I've been a smaller independent processor. We've had several retail stores. We've been in between in all positions. There's room in a well-constructed market for everybody to have a piece. Going back to the KCIA for a second, something that we've had to actively promote is some of the smaller operators, independent operators, people that are new to cannabis, getting involved in that organization. There's a tendency for the majority of people to kind of ride the coattails or just not give input and let the larger players in the state make all the decisions. That's something, and my hope for Kentucky overall, that we can learn from some of these markets that are adversarial from day number one. It's not necessary. Maybe I'm naive. I think there's room for everybody to make their space within a market, at least when there are canopy limits and there's not that natural tendency to just grow as much product as possible and oversaturate. So that's my hope, that we're able to grow a long-term sustainable market in Kentucky that builds the trust of the population, of the regulators, of the politicians, something we can push towards a rec when and if the time comes, and something that creates an economy for the operators that is sustainable for not just one or two groups, but for the vast majority of people involved.
Thanks for that. I'll also add, I think some of our challenges right now are we need more processors to open. Mario Godet is in here. Mario, thank you so much. Mario was the first processor to open in the state and was the only processor in the state for like the first 2 months. And it was not an easy lift on their part for Toro. Those guys did great. I know Dan is here and the group from Nature Med too. They opened in Paducah. They were number 11. I'm so glad you guys are going to be number 12 next week. That's fantastic. And I would say like really the weakest link in our chain right now is our labs, and we need more labs. So if anybody is really good at labs and you want to open in Kentucky, let's talk as quickly as possible, please. We are just about out of time, but I want to ask one more question. We are known for our hospitality in Kentucky. How has it been for you guys to hire in Kentucky? Has it worked out well so far? Do you have any challenges there that we might be helpful with?
The biggest thing for me, they grow a lot of marijuana in Kentucky. Before the industry ever came into place, there has been a lot of marijuana grown there. But it's been fun to see the people that are from Kentucky that have moved to other markets. They're from Colorado, they're in Colorado, California, elsewhere, that have been incredibly happy to be able to come back to their home state and be able to grow products, something they never thought they would be able to do. That's been a joy to see. But overall, just like anywhere, when a cannabis market opens, the rush for people to join a new, exciting industry is at an all-time high. I'm just, as an operator in the state, with those people, they trust in us to be able to oversee good businesses that look out for their employees, and that's something that we are striving to do.
We are only on the retail side in Kentucky, and depending on which market we've gotten into and when we've opened stores, it can be difficult to find great talent who are excited to be in the store. That has not been the case in Kentucky. We've had a lot of interest, and the local talent that we've been able to grab for our first store, we're really excited to be having them on the team and work with them. I think there's a lot of things to learn. Everybody still has a lot of things to learn, but we hope to bring a lot of the skill sets and infrastructure that we have in other states to Kentucky. And so the team that we've been able to not just build in Kentucky, but also that then can service and help the team in Kentucky, I think will set them up for success. So we've had a really good time hiring so far.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ohio, for hosting us and being so welcoming to us. It's been a pleasure.
All right, let's give it up for Kentucky Enters the Chat. Thank you to Rachel and our panel. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We have a little special event here. So we have